right, so welcome back to another episode of the What's Your Motor podcast. Today I have a very special guest today. Her name is Kaitlin Henze. Kaitlin Henze, her and I met about a month and a half, 2 months ago at a Teens Grow Greens event, and it was just wonderful. We engaged in a conversation, and ever since then we've been in constant contact, being resourceful for one another by putting people together and meeting new people. And today I'm able to finally sit down with her today. How are you?
Thanks so much, Walt. I am doing well. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for stopping by, especially after all the holidays, things with Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that downtime and trying to get that relaxation, that R&R that we talked about, but also spending time with family. So it's just great for us to be able to sit down for a minute here just to talk and things like that. So how you feeling though?
I'm feeling pretty good. Yes, excited for a new year up ahead and just enjoying some time to rest and relax before we ramp up in next week.
The new year, I know you said that off camera we were talking and you stated that like your first meeting is right away on January 2nd, right?
Yep.
So you're hitting the ground running.
Yes, I am taking advantage of a couple of the schools having break through the end of, I guess, this week, as we're recording right before New Year's, and teachers, wanting to get in some meetings before the craziness starts.
Absolutely, that madness comes, and that's interesting because you said some of the schools that you are working with actually have the rest of this week off.
Some do,
Some do?
I guess they all have different schedules.
Yeah, my son actually goes back Thursday, but then my daughter goes back the previous week. Yeah. So I'm just like, I don't know. I miss having those extra times off. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yes. So just for starters, tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? And a little bit about your upbringing.
Sure. I grew up in Menlo Park, California, which is in the Bay Area. I lived there until I graduated from high school and decided I wanted an adventure. So I went all the way across the country to North Carolina for college, which was a wonderful adventure. And then after that, moved around to a couple of different states before settling in Wisconsin at the beginning of 2014. So it's coming up on about 11 years that I've been in the Milwaukee area.
Wow. So for starters, you went from California to North Carolina.
Yes.
What was that transition like in terms of whether it be culture, whether it be weather? What was that like?
It was a big transition. I think most of it was probably to do with the fact that I was in college and on my own and in an unfamiliar territory. But I loved it because it opened me up to a lot more diversity than I got within kind of my little insular suburban bubble in California. And it was cool to meet friends from all over the world, really, because we had several international students, and also be exposed to people that grew up in a completely different environment. And take classes that I was really interested in. I went to a liberal arts college, Elon University, and we didn't have to choose our major until the end of sophomore year. So it gave me some time to explore, take some classes that I wasn't offered in high school, and have an opportunity to learn things that were outside of the traditional school path.
Got you. Was it like a melting pot there in North Carolina? Like in terms of the diversity of people?
It's interesting because I try to remember back, and I think the nice thing was Elon brought students from a lot of different areas throughout the U.S. and then some international as well. So that did make it a little bit more of a melting pot. Elon was predominantly female. I think it was like a 60-40 or even 65-35 ratio female to male. So that maybe wasn't quite as diverse, but I think it was a pretty good mix of people, at least more diverse than my high school.
Got you. And what did you major in?
I majored in, it was called Human Service Studies. So it was a combination of all the social sciences. When I was in college, I originally thought that I wanted to go into social work. I took a few psychology and sociology classes early on in college and really enjoyed them. And I've always had this altruistic side of me that gets very fulfilled by creating change in the world. I remember thinking freshman year, like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do something meaningful and impactful. So social work seemed to be the best avenue to do that. I was also in a leadership kind of scholarship program that had me take several different business classes as well as leadership classes. So that gave me a little bit of a different perspective of what can this look like if I bring some of this into business. So ultimately ended up going down the human resources path by combining all the different areas of majors and minors, which is where I started my career when I graduated, was in the human resources field.
In the human resources. Okay. And it's funny because now my title is a credentialing coordinator, but it's actually under human resources.
Yes.
It's kind of weird, but
yeah, HR is a very broad field. There's
very
a lot in it.
Very, very, very broad. And I just remember like being in, when I was an administrator at the elementary school, I did some HR things in terms of like interviewing, background checks and things like that. But now I'm a little bit more, I'm a little bit more like into the HR aspects of everything, where it's like, oh my gosh, what is this sometimes? But I still have the teacher aspect in which I involve myself with a lot of the things that the faculty are trying to do, and that experience with the students and trying to get that together. So I appreciate that. So you go to North Carolina, you finish there, and then you end up coming to Milwaukee. After that.
Yes, I moved. Well, I went from North Carolina to Texas and then moved around a bit there. And then, but yes, made my way up to Milwaukee.
Okay. So on your journey to Milwaukee, were you still working like in human resources, strategy, and change agent type things?
It was pretty much kind of boots on the ground HR. I started working at a manufacturing company. So I was actually in manufacturing plants, on the shop floor, doing HR related work, everything from employee relations concerns to performance management, writing handbooks, even labor negotiations with union plants for blue collar workers. So that's where I got my start and actually really enjoyed that. It was very eye opening. And then eventually, as I grew my career and got a little bit older, transitioned into more kind of white collar professional type settings in offices, and realized that I kind of had more of an impact and liked working in the shop floors a little bit more.
So is it safe to say that you really like more so working with the people and like interacting with people, having those personal relationships, being empathetic, listening, and trying to figure out solutions to help them feel better, productivity and everything like that?
Yes, I like being able to create change, and that, has been a theme of our discussions, wanting to do something meaningful and make an impact. And I did feel like I could do that a little bit more when I was in the more hands-on working with employees day to day, even if it was as simple as answering a question about the employee benefits or helping them interpret a handbook policy. As I got older and grew my career and ended up leading a team and doing consulting work and kind of getting more into the organizational development, change management side, it was a lot of just making PowerPoint presentations and doing trainings and preparing something for a different group, and then they would go on and facilitate it. And some of that I enjoyed, but a lot of that, it really took me away from being able to make an impact. Right.
You kind of got away from dealing with like the people more so directly. And as I listen to you say that, it reminds me of being a teacher and then jumping into administration as a dean and associate principal. I started getting so far away from like my students and my teachers, and I still wanted to have that type of impact and be able to interact with those people. But a lot of times I was only supposed to be doing some of the behind the scenes things and the operational things. And you find that to be not as fulfilling as you actually being on, like you said, boots on the ground or right on the front lines, right? You like interacting with those people and really helping them out, because something as simple as answering an HR benefit question for someone can make their day.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's all about that. And I get that from you from our conversations. Like, you're super personable, you're super empathetic, and you're always extremely, extremely positive. And we need that amongst a lot of the people that are actually on these front lines and things like that. So it's just great to see. As I was listening to you, I started recounting my entire educational career.
Yes, but very similar. Lots of parallels.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So you get to Milwaukee, and what do you start doing here in Milwaukee?
So when I first came here, I was still working for the same manufacturing company.
Okay.
Eventually transitioned from doing HR in manufacturing to working for a small boutique HR consulting firm, which I also found very intriguing and meaningful at first, because our small little consulting group, when I started there in 2016, was serving populations that didn't have their own HR resources. So we were working for a variety of nonprofit organizations and small businesses. And I did get a lot of that same fulfillment that I initially had in my job, where I was just answering basic questions. But for the people on the other side, whether it was the leader of the company or just an employee, it was so tremendously helpful. And I felt very fulfilled and motivated in doing that. Eventually, kind of the same thing happened. I did well in my career, which was great. And I was rewarded by then becoming a team leader, and then eventually a director. And I had a few different layers, kind of like you were describing in your school with the administration. And I thought, I don't like this anymore. So I then kind of transitioned again and worked for 2 large global companies, and was in what I would call an HR shared service function or center of excellence, doing organizational development, change management, and eventually strategic planning. Really enjoyed those roles because I learned a ton, developed some new skill sets that I hadn't had before. And at the same time, there was always something missing. I didn't feel fully fulfilled within my job, which is when I started doing a lot of volunteer work.
Gotcha.
So I got involved with organizations like Teens Grow Greens and several others here locally, where I could do coaching for teenagers, either career counseling or mentorship, or even some strategic planning help or coaching for the nonprofit staff on a pro bono kind of volunteer basis. And that is really what fulfilled me. And my corporate job at the time was able to help me learn and practice the skills, and then provide me with the income to be able to survive.
Absolutely. And so you were doing all of that. You were honing these skills, obtaining new skills, and then you began. How did you meet Cole?
So I met Cole, who is now runs the company Storytelling with Data, who I work for. I met her through a Milwaukee entrepreneurial networking group. At the time, I had left my corporate job and was running my own consulting business, and was in a weird flux where I was enjoying a lot of aspects of it and also really missing the support and the team aspect. And it's a lot of hustle and grind, and can feel very lonely just running a business by yourself. So I was trying to think like, how can I keep the best parts of entrepreneurship and then also maybe find something that's a little bit more stable and steady and supportive. So I had been introduced to the business Storytelling with Data early in 2024 through someone I met in this Milwaukee entrepreneurial community, and immediately fell in love with the content. I started listening to the Storytelling with Data podcast, read Cole's books, subscribed to the blog, and thought, wow, there's really something here.
Absolutely.
The power of being able to take numbers and data and turn it into a meaningful presentation that inspires people to make a change in their life or create action is exactly what I am really passionate about doing for these organizations that are really trying to create change in the community, whether it's a government institution or a nonprofit or even some for-profit companies. So I started being able to use the skills that I learned just through Cole's books and podcast and learning from the data storytellers in my professional career. And then had the opportunity to actually meet Cole and Randy at a networking event, I'd say probably summertime of 2024.
Okay.
And that's when I first learned about Daphne Draws Data, which is
Draws
their
Data.
newest segment of the business.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The Daphne Draws Data. But that's wonderful because you basically met Cole through some networking.
Yes.
And someone able to be resourceful to you. And then you actually were able to meet them. And Randy and Cole are some tremendous people. Big shout out to Randy. Randy took the time a couple weeks ago just to meet with my wife and I just about podcast production, which was wonderful. And he was just so open and just willing. So thank you so much for that. And again, that lends to you being such a resource, for myself, but us being able to have that type of relationship as well, to be resourceful for one another. But I think what you were saying about Daphne Draws Data, like, not only are the kids able to use it, right? But you're able to actually use a lot of the same kind of strategies and things like that for other adult individuals that are trying to make change within their organizations, correct?
Yes. And that's where the business started. When Cole created Storytelling with Data and wrote her first book about 10 years ago now, she was focused on the adult population and helping people like you and I who are passionate professionals learn how to inspire action through data, whether you're advocating for increased funding or trying to get a grant approved or making a presentation to a bunch of senior executives to convince them to hire more people on your team, whatever it is that you're trying to do. A lot of these data presentations and the graphs that are shown on PowerPoint slides are confusing,
extremely,
or boring, and the average person doesn't know how to interpret it. And then they leave the presentation or the meeting thinking, well, I have no idea what they talked about. And Cole really wanted to change that. And that was the impetus for her first book and the workshops and really the business that she built. And after doing that and having her own kids, she realized we have to teach this skill earlier in childhood, because most math curriculums, as you know from being a teacher, there's a data component, but it's not in a way that's fun and engaging for the kids. And so then kids end up thinking the same way that adults do. Well, this is boring or confusing, and I don't want to make an effort to learn this.
Yes.
And so Daphne really tries to change that.
Right. And I think we talked too as well, like sometimes math has a stigma of being hard. And I think either listened to a podcast or I read something where Cole mentioned, where she talked about that, where it doesn't have to be looked at as that way. And the way that when I looked at Daphne Draws Data, the way in which Daphne goes about with the pictorial representations and things like that, that's so wonderful for the young kids. They need to be able to see it in a graphic way.
Yes.
And then they also can, engage with it, whether it writing something down on paper or in using an example that actually relates to them.
Yes.
But again, that's essential for them to know it at a younger age so their minds can actually recognize that, what did she say? It's a superpower.
Yes.
Right? To be able to do that, because we have adults, even to this day, that struggle with understanding the data or even how to disseminate it, right? But when we're able to do it and provide it to the younger population of students earlier, it makes it all better for everyone else.
It does. And it really is a superpower that is needed in all professions. So you don't have to be a data analyst to need this skill. It's critical in the HR profession, as a teacher, as an executive director, whatever field you go into, being able to take data, whether it's, numerical data or even, stories or snippets of information, and turn it into a meaningful story can really help create change and get people to rally around a specific cause. So by teaching it to kids in elementary school in a way that is fun and engaging, using data that interests them and that they can contribute to, whether it's through student surveys or just picking a topic that's interesting to them, is a great way to just start developing that skill and keep them engaged, so then they can continue to learn it in a more and more complex way as they grow older.
Absolutely. And I know that you guys are going into schools, right? And actually hosting these presentations and workshops for the kids. Now, would you say that it is all of the workshops and things like that, they cater to all the students, right? So even the students that may have a learning deficit and things like that, do you feel as if it's still effective for those individuals?
Certainly. And that's really what one of our main goals is to make Daphne Draws Data and these graphing exercises accessible for all kids. And so we're doing that in a couple of ways, through the resources that we provide online, and both in the graph glossary in the book and then through the YouTube videos and graphing activities on the website. We provide extensions and scaffolds so gifted and talented students can take this beyond.
Right.
There's a concept that you probably know of in education of the low ceiling and or the low floor and high ceiling.
Absolutely.
Where you give a easy entry point, so there's not really a barrier to be able to learn it, but then it can extend essentially forever in terms of what the learning looks like. So we do that. We also have been making sure that there's not really like tons of materials that are needed to create graphs. You don't even need computers. It's just a piece of paper and a crayon, and that's all Daphne uses in the book. So if parents don't have fancy equipment, they can still do this at home with their kids. And we're also working with a variety of schools, including a lot of Title I schools, to donate books, offer programs for free, things like that, that will help get this information in the hands of kids that may not be going to the bookstores or have parents that are really involved. We want to make sure that they can learn this superpower also.
Absolutely. And when you just mentioned not needing a lot of materials, not needing computers where you can just use pen and paper or pencil and paper, that's so authentic, that's so organic. And I think that sometimes as recent, I'll say this, we've kind of gone away from that to where it's, no disrespect to any, school or whatnot or how they're doing it. But we've become so computer dependent to where, you click a button, which I understand that there are some advantages to it, but I also think that when the student actually has to write and try to draw and actually use it in a way in which they're physically like immersed in it, I think it provides a better advantage for them.
Oh yeah.
So I just love hearing that. I love hearing that because they always say in education there's a pendulum swing in terms of how things go. And I've been around for a little while now, and I remember being in school, so I've seen it go from, no, we're not going to do rote memorization, we're not going to do that, we're not going to write things down, we're going to do it all on a computer, to we're going to bring it back just to, you know what I mean? So right now we're just in a different little spot, but I just love hearing that because I always want kids to really be engaged, and it sounds like they're really, really engaged with the workshops and things that are going on.
Yes, yeah, it's wonderful seeing the events that we've been doing because they're so interactive and the kids have so much fun and they're really, really smart. They know the answer, they know how to interpret these graphs, yet on the test, their test scores might not show that because a lot of times math and especially the data sections of the tests, standardized tests, are the weak point in many schools, is from what I've heard. But these kids know the answers. You just have to give it to them in a way that is interesting and exciting.
Yes, and I like what you said earlier about the the low ceiling, low floor and high ceiling and things like that, and the entry point being accessible. Because in education, it's important that our teachers remember that we have to customize the learning for all our students.
Yes.
And a lot of teachers may not understand that, especially like new teachers. And that's one of the people that I really try to get to. I really try to get to those new educators so they understand that the academia that they were taught in regards to going through their elementary education, certifications and things like that for their degrees is a great foundation. But when you get into that classroom, you understand that the teacher means a lot more than just the lesson plan, because you really have to cater to those students and being able to provide and decipher information that's reachable and attainable for them, and then grow them and increase those expectations. Don't let them off the hook.
Yeah.
But allow them to see, understand, and feel successful and obtain some success and continue to build up on it. So I think that's a huge thing. And I love education and I love kids. So I'm just listening to you and just reminiscing, because right now I'm in higher ed. So I'm just thinking back to those times being with those kids. So
it's very, very meaningful.
Yes, absolutely. So as you continue to do that, right now you're the education and outreach specialist.
Yes.
How has that been for you, just being in that role and really having to reach out to a lot of different people, getting contacts from other individuals? How has that been?
It's been very exciting. I've learned a lot. I came into this role in September of 2024, not really having a whole lot of experience in the elementary education industry. I had a few contacts, and it's just shown the power of community, especially here in Milwaukee. You know, part of the when I meet people, they're like, "Wait, you're from California? You're choosing to live in Wisconsin?
Oh,
like,
my
are you
gosh.
crazy?"
You would
I get
be
that
rich
all the time.
You would be rich if you had $1 every time somebody asks that.
Yes, probably. And the biggest reasons I tell them is, one, aside from it being more affordable, which is a huge reason, the other piece of it is I just love the community here. Everyone is willing.
You said that to me when
help
we
each
met
other.
for coffee.
Yes, and that has been really the Milwaukee community has shown up, and we are spreading Daphne globally. We've been in various schools in Scotland and England and even Australia. We are also expanding into other states, but we're starting here in Milwaukee, and that's where we've done the most of our in-person programming so far. And it's been fantastic to meet people like you, Walt, and several others who say, "I love what you are doing with Daphne Draws Data.
Absolutely.
Let me make some connections to you." You've been tremendously helpful, along with others, and that has allowed us to reach a broader variety of kids. And every meeting I go into with open eyes and open ears and learn and really come in vulnerable and say, "Hey, I'm new to this. We're new to this as storytelling with data. How can you help us learn? What can we build and what can we do that will be meaningful to you as an educator or as a parent or as the leader of Big Brothers Big Sisters or some other elementary age kids nonprofit?" And just being willing to listen and take their ideas has helped us really grow and expand.
And I think that community piece right there. I think a lot of people overlook that Milwaukee does have a community of people that really are trying to enrich the kids and enrich one another, you know, in regards to partnerships and things like that. And I was also just thinking now, my buddy, his name is Leonce. His son is autistic. And I believe Leonce is Walt is in 5th grade. I think he has to be like in 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade. I can't remember. But I wanted to get his contact to you guys because I think his school would also benefit from that as well. And I would love for you guys to, you know, connect with him as well in regards to that, because when I read that book, I was just like, you know, this is tangible.
Yes.
This is actually tangible.
Yeah, we found that it's really, Daphne Draws Data has been very attractive and gotten a lot of great traction with a few of the different communities that have different learning needs, whether it be gifted and talented student programs or autistic or neurodivergent students or even special education. It's crazy how much it spans that spectrum, but we look at it as a supplemental learning resource.
Gotcha.
So right now it's not going to replace a math curriculum.
Right.
But we're trying to help educators understand that it can be a supplement to teaching some of your data lessons. Now, unfortunately, you know, as you probably know, in many cases, every single minute of every day within a teacher's schedule is programmed to the curriculum and planned out. Now, there's some schools that have more flexibility, but what we're finding is with these other tangential programs, whether it be, again, the gifted and talented program, special education, after school programs, places like a mathnasium, where kids go to learn, they have a lot more flexibility and they can start incorporating the Daphne resources a little bit more easily than they can in the school day classroom.
Right. And I feel some kind of way about that. I've always been an advocate for teacher autonomy.
Yes. Yes.
I understand that we have curriculums, we have things that we want to do, and I believe that we should be able to do that. But I also believe that teachers should be able to act on their own volition and be like, you know what, I do want to incorporate this. I'm still going to do the things that I need to do for the year in regards to making sure the students are prepared, they're, you know, continue to progress, but I should be able to bring in something supplemental.
Yes.
And I think when I was a teacher, I still had that autonomy. Yeah. Now, again, we're talking about the pendulum swing and the switching and the shifting. It is extremely regimented, and I get it. Students love routine. Absolutely, absolutely. I truly believe that. But they also can benefit from someone bringing something in that they have to adapt to and add on to. Because in the real world, I mean, we can have our regimen, but how many times do we go throughout a day or go throughout a week or a month where schedules change and things change and we have to add on to something else? So I just think about that. And as you were saying that, like, Daphne is even still relatable and understandable for the neurodivergent population and things like that. What do you think about that in regards to that?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that it can be accessible for a variety of different people, because every child, no matter what upbringing they have or whether they have specific learning disabilities that are diagnosed or not, every child has different learning needs.
Absolutely.
So being able to have additional resources that give kids with different learning needs a way to do something physically with their hands and learn in a fun and creative way. That's why we're going to continue to build out more activities and discussion questions and graphs in the graph glossary and videos to just add to this resource library for any adult to be able to teach their children or help learn themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you have experience just in terms of you just growing up.
Yes.
Because I think you said you were kind of like neurodivergent as well, correct?
Yes.
So like, what has been your experience? And then just thinking about all of that, like, how does that make you feel? Because you've accomplished so many great things, and a lot of people would look at it and try to label you and be like, oh, no, they won't be able to do it, but you've done some tremendous things. And it's like really trying to help people to understand that, like, it's just a different way of thinking.
Yes, it is. And people who are neurodivergent, myself included, our brains just work a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
And we need different sorts of environments to help us thrive. I was fortunate enough in elementary school to have a really amazing teacher that actually helped me overcome some of my social anxiety at lunch and recess on the playground by collecting data, by counting kids who were on each part of playground equipment to answer the question, where is the place that's safest to play for me?
Right.
Who got really overwhelmed by a lot of kids in one place. So I am hoping that I can impact all types of kids by just giving them the skill through Daphne to be able to collect data in the world around them and use that to understand the world and make decisions and learn about themselves. Absolutely.
And I love that because going back to Leon's has a podcast, Special Needs and Wants, and he was inspired to do it because of his son.
That's great.
I've been on there a little while. I'm kind of like his co-host a little bit, but he does his thing. And I really have to connect you guys because I think it would be great for that school. I'm really great for that school. And he's a really hands-on dad, and I know that you would bring a lot.
Yeah, I'd love to get a book to his son and
absolutely
see what they think.
So we got to do that. So as we think about that in a combination of things, and you sit back and you just told me about your entire like professional career, a little bit about your upbringing, storytelling with data, Daphne Draws Data, how it caters to all students, being able to get out there, the ability to be resourceful, the community, like it's just so much. Like when you sit back and you think, maybe it's at night on the ride home or whatnot, what is your motive? What is your motive for, why you do all the things that you do in regards to being this education and outreach specialist, doing the HR consulting, wanting to be a change agent, just having that heart that is super, super wholesome and altruistic? Like, what is your motive?
I'll go back to something I said at the beginning of our conversation is I want to create change in people's lives. And that has always been something that's a core part of me. It brought me into social work. It brought me to human resources. It has now brought me where I am now. I took some time away from that path and realized like I don't feel fulfilled. So being able to impact people's lives and those, I call them light bulb moments, whether it's for kids or adults, where you just see that something that you have said or presented has clicked in someone's mind. That's what motivates me, and that's why I love what I do now.
And trust and believe, I know that for a fact. We've had how many conversations? We have like a handful of conversations.
Yes.
And our conversations start out, it's supposed to be like a 2-minute quicker, and we end up talking for like 30, 45 minutes. Like, and it's just great. Always a wonderful time. So I definitely appreciate you for sharing your story, all that you do, your motivation beyond with the fact of you just trying to make a change and an impact and see people have those light bulb moments. And it makes my heart swell just hearing you talk about it, because I know that you truly, truly mean it. And you're extremely, extremely genuine about it. Yes,
well, it's that intrinsic motivation, and that's why
absolutely
I was so excited to meet you and hear about the work that you're doing too, and helping young people find that. It's absolutely great. So thank you.
No, thank you so much for coming today. We'll continue to be in touch, obviously, and we'll continue to be resourceful for everyone out here. And until next time, what's your motive?